Welcome, guys, to the MLG WCS preview show. We're going to do a really quick bracket predictions. Also, quick note, we're going to have a bracket out that you guys can print out and fill in all your own predictions as well. That's going to go on, once I finish this, we're going to put a YouTube video, put it on Reddit, along with also a link where you can download the actual image yourself. You can show your friends your predictions and pass it around, and we'll have some fun with that. You can have your BlizzCon party. You all throw in, $2, or you all throw in a can of beer, and then winner gets it all at the end, whoever has the most accurate predictions. But here we go. Let's actually just first take a look at the very initial bracket so you guys know what you're looking at. This is the WCS Global Grand Finals, the 16 best players of the world by WCS points, and you know what? Looking at this player list, I think those points are just insanely well done. The way the Soul system has come together, you truly pretty much have the 16 best players of the world, or at least the 16 best in performances this year. You see the matchups: Nanoa, Sulky, Bomber, MMA, Hero, SOS, Pult, Alive, Deer, Taeja, Jaedong, MVP, Maru, MC, Innovation, and Duck. Of course, best of fives up until the grand finals, which will be a best of 7. Now let me talk a little bit about my predictions, and you guys can compare them with how you think your predictions will go. So the first match, of course, Nanoa against Sulky. A couple of things to talk about really quickly. Nanoa's strongest matchup is typically his Protoss versus Terran. So if he can get past Sulky, I do think Nanoa has actually a really good shot to make it very far and maybe even potentially win this tournament, as later on it's a very heavy tournament. Unfortunately, Nanoa, I think, has the very worst first round matchup you could have possibly gotten. I think out of everyone in this tournament, Sulky is going to be the toughest opponent for Nanoa. Nanoa is exceptional at running very aggressive builds against Zerg. He's just absolutely exceptional doing it. We saw him dismantle Revival with 2 base attacks. It was just Tuesday, just this past Tuesday, to get that top 16 spot in BlizzCon. The problem is that Sulky is the epitome of a really well-rounded Zerg. And there's basically his scouting early game, his reactions to what he sees are so perfect that he's never going to overcommit to an attack he sees coming a little bit earlier. That'll make him susceptible to a later attack. He's always going to be as greedy as possible, and he's going to get away with it. And then when your attack comes, he's going to have an overwhelming number of forces ready to defend it. So Sulky is probably the best Zerg against Protoss 2-base timings in the entire world. And he also happens to be probably, him along with Curious, I think, are the 2 best late-game Zerg against Protoss players. So Nanoa has an extremely uphill battle. That being said, just as I talk about how good Sulky is, his weakest matchup is Zerg versus Protoss. And honestly, I think he's looking so good for this tournament. If anyone's going to take him out, it may be Nanoa. Nanoa prepares some really good 3-base play, really controlling moving around the map and hitting timings before Sulky gets to that super late game that's insanely scary. I think that's when Nanoa can take him out. I think this is going to be, it could be just an obliteration if Nanoa goes for 2-base timings and Sulky finds a way to stop them. Or it could be a very tense best of 5. I do have to give Sulky the edge, though, so I think Sulky's going to come out on top of that one. Now, the next matchup is going to be MMA against Bomber. And this is actually, I've actually kind of feel that Bomber is one of the more underrated Terrans right now at the moment. His Terran versus Protoss is almost unstoppable. I think it's in one of the top 1 or 2 best Terran versus Protosses in the world. It's spectacular. Unfortunately, his TVT has never been his strongest matchup. And the last TVT we saw him play, like in an offline match against a world-class opponent, was in like WCS season, I think it was season 2 finals. And he took out Taeja 3-2. So that was a great performance, taking out Taeja 3-2. But that was quite a long time ago. We haven't seen too much of his TVT yet. We have seen a lot of MMA's TVT. And later on, I'm going to showcase some of his games because MMA recently he's had a tough time in TVT. But historically, he's been very good in TVT. And one of the things that you kind of see, MMA loves Banshees. He pretty much gets Banshees almost every single TVT. But that's why lately he's had a tough time. I mean, he lost to Mara 1-3 in WCS Season 3 finals. He lost to Beyond 1-2 in the Red Bull Battlegrounds New York City qualifiers. And it's because when he goes up against these other world-class Terran players, they're not going to die to one Banshee. Like, their play is just good enough to not down to one Banshee. And as the game drags out against a player like Bomber, it could be tough. That being said, I've seen him. I mean, he dismantled Taeja, like, last week in Nature Team Story Cup just with 2 Banshees. So I feel like I would give MMA the advantage against Bomber just because his Banshee play is pretty much the best in the world. And I do think he's a little bit better controlling his units, which is very important in TVT. So I think MMA is going to be Bomber. We're going to see, if you take a look at that bracket as we fill it in, I think we're going to see Sulky versus MMA in the round of 8 up there. And I feel bad for Bomber because I do think this is a tough tournament for him. If he had a bracket with all the Prodosses in it, I think he'd be great. But if you look at that, if Bomber can beat MMA and Nano beats Sulky, Bomber's looking great. But I think MMA is just going to be too tough for him. We're going to see Sulky and MMA in the round of 8. Going down, we're going to talk about the Hero versus SOS matchup. Now, Hero is a huge fan favorite. A lot of people love Liquid Hero. I love Liquid Hero. But he struggled a lot in PvP when he plays world-class opponents. Hero's play has always revolved around just basically the fact that he doesn't care what decision he makes. He's just going to out-micro and out-macro and out-multitask his opponent. That's literally what he does. He's like, well, I'm playing Terran. I don't care if your build is slightly more greedy and you get ahead. It doesn't matter to me. Because I'm going to defend your drop play. I'm going to do great War Prism Wrath of my own. And in the battles, my Storm Control is going to crush you. That's the way Hero plays. Now, the problem is in PvP, taking good positions in engagements is often more important than your micro in the engagement. As the game gets to the mid-game, it's all about positioning, and it's all about reaction to your opponent. Even if you had the best micro multitasking in the world, if you try to be aggressive with Blink Sockers against an opponent who's sitting back with Immortals and Sentries, it's not going to work. That's a situation where you have to defend, you have to contain, and play a different style of game. And Hero often struggles with those kind of tactical decisions, and I mean, he can crush lower-level Protoss just by even making the wrong decision, just crushing with micro. But against some of the world-class players, it kind of shows. In the Stars War League Finals, he lost 0-4 to Partying, and it was just clear Partying was just a little bit stronger in the matchup. In WCS Season 3 Finals, he got knocked out by Deer twice in the same group. He lost to Oz 0-3 in WCS America. So, I mean, he really struggles against Protoss, who can come close or can match him or even slightly better than him in mechanics, because he often puts himself in a disadvantageous position just from making a little bit of a weaker decision. And in other matchups, PvZ, PvT, multitasking actually is more important than in PvP. And so PvP, that skill set of his doesn't shine as much, and he really struggles at the top level. So I really think SOS is going to be favored here. SOS, though, he's not known for stellar PvP either. So if there's one world-class Protoss, like if it was Hero up against Partying or San or like Deer, I would say Hero's in a world of trouble. SOS is the one world-class Protoss, top 5 Protoss in the world, who I think Hero might be able to beat. SOS has struggled some in PvP as well. This is kind of both. It's not their forte for both these guys. You know, he actually got knocked out of Code S to Trap. Yeah, that was it. He got knocked out of Code S to Trap, so you can tell his PvP isn't quite at the world-class level lately. He was able to re-qualify for Code S by beating Avenge in a PvP, so he is still good at that. That being said, I still think SOS will be Hero. When it comes down to it, Hero is not going to be able to just way out micro SOS. It just won't happen. SOS is pretty much almost at level of Hero with micro, and SOS will just play safe and solid, and as the game goes on, Hero is more likely than SOS to make a positional error and lose the game that way. So we're going to see SOS take out Hero, I think. Up against him is going to be the winner of Deer and Taeja. This matchup, I think, is actually, for me watching, this will be the matchup I think we're going to see the closest and highest skill level, respectively, in a first-round matchup between both these guys. This is going to be just super, super intense matchup, because what we have is it's going to be really, really fun for you guys who like to watch later TVPs as well, because you have Deer. Deer is like the most standard, super defensive PvT player out here. It's gonna be absolutely insane. His play is just super defensive. And actually, I just noticed I skipped around, so I meant to talk about Pulled against Alive. So we'll Deer Taeja in a second. If SOS beats Hero, like I think, he's gonna play the winner Pulled Alive. That one I think is gonna go to Pulled. I'm sorry, Alive is good, but I think Pult is going to take out Alive. Pult is just on fire lately. He's had better results than Alive. Alive kind of snuck in there doing really well in the earlier WCS America seasons where it honestly wasn't quite as competitive. Well, actually, I mean, Alive did well in the later WCS America seasons as well, but I don't know. I just don't feel Alive in TVT. I think Alive, I could see him winning TVPs, but against Pult's just too strong. Pult's up one of the best teams in the world right now. I think he's going to crush you and go up against SOS. Now onto the matchup I really want to talk about, Deer against Taeja. I'm actually super excited for this matchup. That's why I skipped over the Pult's Alive matchup, just because Deer versus Taeja is going to be freaking amazing. We have Deer, who's like the most defensive macro, super safe, super solid, make no mistakes. As soon as your opponent makes a mistake, you're going to be ahead. As soon as they make a second mistake, you're going to win. That's the way Deer plays. He's just super spectacular. And we saw him just demolish Maru and Sulky, both for the same reasons. Maru and Sulky, they couldn't find a hole. And as soon as they slip up, Deer punishes them. That being said, Taeja is a player who's also very patient. He's not the guy to throw 18 drops around and then, maybe those drops will work and he'll win. But maybe, and likely against Deer, you try to throw 18 drops at him, one of them will do damage, 8 of them will escape, and 9 of them will die horribly, and he'll be way ahead, right? That's probably what's going to happen. I think Taeja's style versus Deer is actually, he's one of the best Terrans equipped to take on Deer because he just loves playing for that super late macro game. His Ghost Viking control is, I would say, the best in the world. Happy's up there too, but Taeja does more multitasking throughout it. He's a little bit more scary in other aspects of the game. And Taeja's Ghost Viking control is just spectacular. Deer's Templar control is spectacular too. We're going to see some insane late game engagements and late game positioning, late game harass from both these players. It's going to be a super spectacular PvT, but I do have to give the edge to Taeja. I think one of the best ways to take out Taeja is getting advantages into mid game. And Deer plays very passively throughout the opening. And if you let Taeja get to the late game, I think his Ghost control just out of this world. I think Deer's going to be in for a world of pain, so I'm going to have to give Taeja an advantage there. The winner of that will play the winner of Jaedong MVP. Jaedong MVP, to me, is the second most exciting match in this, right behind Deer Taeja. And the reason why is because it's Jaedong and MVP. I'm going to say Jaedong I give the edge to here. The reason is if you look at MVP's latest results, they just haven't been that insane. His TVT still looks great, but, he has the hand issues. And obviously TVT looks great because TVT is more of a positioning and decisions. But against a Zerg like Jaedong, I just don't see him having the control to stop Jaedong's overwhelming mid-game play. He's struggled a bit, especially TVP. So for MVP, if he makes it out, he better hope Deer doesn't beat Taeja, because MVP's TVP has been looking really, really troublesome lately. He got knocked out of European Premier Division, losing to Showtime twice. And Showtime's a strong player, but when you're talking about trying to go up against players like Deer, like MC, losing to Showtime, he lost to Pig Baby 2-0 at IM New York. He lost to Pig 1-2 in the Sydney Showdown as well. Of course, that's a Zerg player. So MVP's his player of the last 4 months has been looking very shaky. Season 1, he looked amazing. Season 2 and 3 WCS, he's looking very shaky. TVT, I could still see him doing well, but getting through Jaedong, I don't see it happening. Jaedong's just too much of a monster in the mid game. His Muta speeding baiting play will shut down MVP, and MVP's never gonna get a 4th base. It's kind of what's gonna happen. So we're gonna give Jaedong the nod there. Now the last kind of quarter of the round of 16. We're looking at a match between Maru and MC. Now, MC is the boss toss. He's great at just imposing his will on lesser opponents. The problem is Maru a lesser opponent? If you look at how MC plays, he just crushes his opponents by taking control of the tempo early on and never letting them get a chance to play. The other way he wins is against Terran. I think he has the second best Templar control in the world. I think the only player who has better Templar control than MC is Parting. I think his Templar control is even better than Deer's. The problem is that I'm not sure if he can handle Maru's multi-prong attacks ever across the map. When MC gets a bunch of Templar, I think he'll do fine against Maru in a straight-up engagement. But can he defend 3 bases against Maru's relentless multi-pronged aggression? I'm not sure. Maru's one front. If they're battling one front, I think MC's micro can equal Maru's, and it's going to be really great. If they're microing on two fronts, that's where Maru shines. He's one of the few guys who drops everywhere and controls every drop so spectacularly. I think he's going to overrun MC with just his insane multi-pronged attacking. Maru's weakness is a Protoss or Zerg who can defend throughout the mid-game and then get a giant army and crush him as the game goes forward, just because he hasn't developed his army because he spent all these resources on these multi-pronged attacks. I'm not sure if MC's as solid defensively to survive Maru's mid-game pressure, so I think Maru's going to win that. And up against Maru is going to be the winner of Duck Duck and Innovation. Duck Duck, he's a very solid player, but Innovation's Innovation. I think Innovation's just going to run over him. Innovation's too well-rounded at TVP. Innovation, his TVP and TVZ are out of this world. Innovation's weakness is TVT, but Duck Duck's not Terran, and I don't think Duck Duck's going to beat him. Now, looking at the round of 8, assuming that these predictions work out, we're going to have Sulky against MMA in the round of 8. I think that one goes to Sulky hands down. Sulky's Zerg vs. Terran is the best Zerg vs. Terran there is. And if you think about ways to beat Sulky as a Terran, the first step is you have to be able to match his macro, which MMA has a lot of skills. I don't think he can match Sulky's macro. The second step is to be able to match Sulky's multitasking. You have to be able to find a way to make your drops work. You have to find a way to counter his speeding run bys. You have to find a way to counter his meter harass. I don't think MMA can match Sulky's multitasking. I think Sulky's just mechanically too strong, and Zerg vs. Terran is a matchup that heavily rewards mechanics. Mechanics are like 99% of Zerg vs. Terran, and Sulky's a monster at those. I think that's why I think Zerg vs. Terran's the strongest matchup. Statistically, ZVZ is the strongest, but I think versus Terran, he's just absolutely monstrosity with his mechanics. I think he's definitely going to be MMA if it gets to that point. Up against them is going to be the winner of Pult against SOS, if my predictions work out. That one's going to be really interesting. I do think it's going to go to Pult, just because SOS is great and creative, but Pult is he's super solid. His best matchup is Terran versus Protoss, and he's been on tear lately. It's also going to be in Anaheim, and the crowd is going to be going insane for Pult. Pult, has been playing in the Americas. He lives in Texas. He speaks English really well. The crowd is going to be loving Pult, and Pult's PVT is very, very strong. He's kind of, if you take Maru and you take Taeja and you think of a player in between Maru and Taeja, that's Pult. He's not as defensive as Taeja. He's not as crazy multi-pronged aggression as Maru. He does some of both. He'll play a really strong late game, maybe not quite as strong as Taeja's, but also do a lot of mid-game aggression, good tactically conceived plays. He's a little bit more aggressive and better at multi-pronged attacking his opponent than Taeja. A little bit less than Maru. He's kind of, if you combine them and take someone who's right in between them both, that's Pult, and I think he's a little bit too complete of a player for SOS right now. On the other side of the bracket, we're going to have the winner of Taeja Deer, which I think is going to be an amazing match. I think it's going to be Taeja going up against, most likely, Jaedong. Taeja, I think I would favor him against Jaedong, because Jaedong is great at mid-game aggression. If you let Jaedong get to the mid-game, his mutas, speed lean, speed baiting play is just stellar. He can roll over a lot of opponents. But again, I talk about Taeja being an immaculate defensive player. Taeja's defensive play is so great, he's going to survive Jaedong's mid-game aggression. Once he gets that fourth base up, it gets to the super late game, that's where Jaedong starts to lose a little bit of steam. So in this best of 5, look to see how much of an advantage Jaedong can get in the mid-game. If he can't get that advantage, if Taeja stabilizes 4 bases, gets 3-3 bio, even if Jaedong gets the Hive, I think Taeja's late-game play just a little more solid, a little stronger. He's absolutely dominant late game. I think he's going to take out Jaedong there and advance to the semifinals. Of course, up against them would be the winner of Maru versus Innovation, which is going to be an amazing match. We've seen both Maru and Innovation play several times. Maru typically comes out ahead by a bit. And it really comes down to the fact that TVT is Maru's best matchup. TVT is Innovation's worst. Now, why is TVT Maru's best matchup? Well, everyone knows Maru is basically the guy who multi-prong attacks, he throws units everywhere, and he micros excellently, and he also has great macro behind it. Now, against Zerg and against Protoss, Maru can lose steam in the late game. The reason why? Well, against Zerg and Protoss, let's say they build up that giant death ball, If they get a giant army, if Zerg stops to drop the Mutas, they get to Ultralists and Festers. If Protoss gets Colossi and Templar, and it's kind of developed to the late game, if you haven't fully developed your tech yet, if you haven't really incorporated super late game Terran yet, they can attack you and kill you. If they're a little bit stronger, they can attack you and kill you. You can't make a comeback. In TVT, what can happen is that even if, let's say, Innovation has a slight advantage because he defends some of the great mid-game play that Maru does, what can happen is that he can't necessarily attack and kill Maru. TVT, you can defend with an inferior force, which means you can still pick up 4 Medivacs full units and attack somewhere else. Against Protoss in the late game, you pick up 4 Medivacs. If they attack you, you don't have a couple planetary fortresses, you're going to die. With 40 supply out on the map, if Protoss hits you with their full army, you're going to die. And that often is true with Zerg as well. But in TVT, you can do a lot more split action. Even in the late game, you can really force the map to be spread out. And that's why Maru excels at it. I think he's going to take out Innovation and advance to semifinals. Now, talking about the semifinal matches, we're going to have an insane match between Sulky and Pult. And honestly, while I do think Pult's TVZ is a little bit better than MMA's, I still don't think he's going to take on Sulky. I just, honestly, right now, I'm not sure if I see a Terran taking on Sulky. I think Sulky's just too good at that matchup. I mean, maybe if a Protoss gets through, but I don't see Sulky losing to Terran. I'm trying to think of ways Terrans can beat him, and it doesn't occur to me. If there's any way, I think Pult may be the most likely Terran to beat him, because Pult is the comeback Terran. So even if Sulky is mid-game is great, he gets ahead, Pult's one of the few Terrans who really knows how to split his armies up across the map very effectively, which is very important to play in a super late-game TVC. If you try to keep rallying units at Sulky, doing that rally Widowmine push, that's not going to work. Sulky is too good to lose to that. But Pult maybe to beat him with some split moves across the map, but in a best of 5, I have to give that to Sulky. I think he's going to win that. The other semifinal match, if things work out how I think they might, would be Maru against Taeja. And that one's going to be tense. That would be a super, super sick TVT. I would have to give Maru the edge. Maru trains so much in Korea. TVT is his best matchup for the reasons I said. And the same reasons why I think it'll be Innovation. The same reasons why I think it'll be Taeja. And then in the finals, we've got again an amazing matchup. If it's Sulky, Maru, that could go either way. But I do think Sulky's defensively too strong of a player to fall for Maru's multi-prong attacks. And I think we would see Sulky go ahead and win the grand finals. Anyways, guys, these are my predictions. Let me know yours. This will be up on YouTube in a second. Post your predictions. I'm going to throw a link to download the bracket before it's filled out. You can fill it out yourself, give it to your friends, have a little betting pool. You can bet, games of StarCraft. You can bet a couple drinks, whatever you want, and have a lot of fun with this, because tomorrow, WCS Global Finals starts. I'm going to be watching it. I hope all you guys are watching it. But don't go anywhere, because coming up next, we're actually going to showcase some gameplay from all these players who are playing tomorrow.